Hi everyone, I'm Gina Minardi and I'm a licensed therapist who got fed up with therapy. This is a one-woman show about my journey of finding the spaces between non-traditional approaches of healing. What I learned is that there's no one right way to heal, and you truly are your best resource. Therapists and healers are meant to support you on your path, but they don't have all of the answers. You do. This show is about the spaces between laughter, tears, thoughts, ego, soul, messy growth, and moments of joy. It's about personal liberation, inner knowing, and the tools that get you there. I will cover topics that make many of us uncomfortable and interviewing people who are willing to go there. I've spent thousands of hours listening to human beings navigate their life story, from rehabs in Malibu to homeless shelters in East LA, and now my private practice. It has been some of the most profound, painful, and beautiful moments in my life. Thank you so much for joining me. Hello, friends. How are you? It has been a while since I have decided to sit down and actually write a podcast episode versus interviewing someone, but I've been feeling a lot of feelings lately. And some may say it's the moon and it's this and the that, but I don't know what it is. I think for me, it's just being human and going through cycles. And I've been thinking a lot about that. Cycles of when we're feeling better and more connected to ourselves, and other cycles where we're feeling more disconnected. So I would say over the last month, it's been a larger feeling of disconnection. And I've been pondering a lot on the idea of self-love. It's so toted in the new age wellness and psychological world, how to discover self-love and, this feeling of loving yourself all the time. And what I've come to is, I don't know if that's real. I really don't. And maybe that is, coming from somebody who's struggled with, I would say almost a lifetime of deep self-criticism, perfectionism, really high expectation of myself. But I'm just going to go with what I wrote today. So there are about 10,000 online courses with such titles as Love Yourself Whole or Find Deep Self-Compassion. And I've taken a lot of courses. I've done a lot of therapy. I've read a lot of books. And what I've realized is all of this stuff is really, really fantastic information, which of course can be a great teacher and can open deep insights and questions into yourself that you journal about, ponder about, and you can make shifts in your life. But what I've really come to learn, and you've probably heard me say this before, is it really comes, I think, the ebb and flow of self-compassion and feeling deep self-love comes from a daily practice, daily choices, and really engaging in rewiring of your brain, because a lot of this stuff is so deeply encoded in all of us. One of my clients recently said to me, Gina, I feel like there is this trance of unworthiness, particularly with women, and we're all trying to undo this. And when she said that, I just paused because it kind of floored me because there's so much truth to it. So my girlfriend Aiden and I love to hike together and have these long, deep conversations about what it means to be a woman. And recently after one of our hikes, we looked at each other and we made a pact that we were no longer going to spend any time talking about things like anti-aging, bodies, cleanses, all of the things that plague so many women. And to this note, I remember one of my girlfriends from the Bay Area said that this is more heightened around women from Southern California and LA. That vanity and image are kind of a larger part of the culture in Southern California. And of course, I agree with this after living in LA for almost 13 years and being closer to Hollywood and modeling and just musicians, all of the things where there is a lot of emphasis on image. So I do agree with the sentiment, but I also totally disagree. And in this, I work with clients from all over the country and have friends, from everywhere. And there is this common thread for women to have a need for validation, approval, and praise. And I recently started reading a book by Dr. Shefali, and I am totally blown away by reading the words written by this woman. I just feel them so deeply in my core and in my soul. So, why is it that I feel this so deeply? And it's really because she's writing about what I've been thinking about so much in this last month. I've been thinking about two things, one being capitalism, the other one being patriarchy, but I'm going to focus on patriarchy and what she writes about. So I'm going to share some of her words right now. And she says, with women, we cover our inner void in so many ways as women. Endless diets, push-up bras, Botox treatments, dyeing our hair, fake lashes. Add this to slimming undergarments to wear to create a body we don't naturally have, the clothes we incessantly agonize over, or the insanely uncomfortable shoes that we adorn our feet with. So all told, the amount of energy we expend, quote unquote, fixing our external appearance is staggering. Of course, many of us rebel against this and go the complete opposite way to thwart the quote unquote standard. But often when we do, we throw out the baby in the bathwater, ignoring self-care altogether. So now I ask, how do we find the balance to this? And again, Dr. Shefali continues to state, there is no real peace when there is no authenticity. Self-love blossoms when we claim that's my journal page right there, when we claim expression and our actions. Each time we honor our feelings and inner process, we declare self-love. When we rebel against culture's embargo, against our voice, we give ourselves and each other the space to be seen and heard. So I'm going to start with, sharing about myself. You guys know this about me. Spaces Between is also partly just personal Gina Minardi journal. And one of my really, really good girlfriends, we were in the airport and I was sort of, making this shitty claim like, oh my God, look at all of these young women with Botox. And she said, Gina, you're like the most obsessed person pointing out who has not gotten Botox. And again, she kind of stopped me in my tracks when she says this. I love a friend who can check me in a moment. And, but I also really thought, well, there is a deep reason for this. So when I was 16, that was the first time that my mom got me Botox and I had no idea what was happening. So my mom had taken me to a dermatologist's office because I had recently fallen on my face as I was visiting a frat house. My cousin was living down at San Diego and he was going to San Diego State, and I was just completely shit-faced, drinking Bacardi 151, smoking blunt after blunt. I remember dancing in this lower basement area, just like having the time of my life. And then all of a sudden it was like the lights went off. I could barely see. I had blurred vision. I couldn't even tell who was in front of me. So I remember coming up from this basement and I was kind of like dancing, skipping. I don't even know what I was doing. And I saw my cousin and I skipped doing whatever the thing I was doing. And I went through a tarp, which was on top of this frat building. And I went over through it. There was a football team waiting to get into this party. Everybody parted ways as I went over the cement ledge and just cracked my face. So luckily, the EMT actually said to me, Gina, you would have broken your neck and maybe paralyzed yourself if you weren't drunk. So that's one thing on your side. But I remember my mom picking me up from the airport and she was just devastated. But she was devastated for a couple of reasons. Number one, her 16-year-old daughter, had gotten completely drunk, and I had 2 black eyes, a broken nose, and I was missing skin over a good portion of my face. I mean, I really looked pretty intense. So I remember her saying to you, well, maybe Gina, this is you getting a fierce lesson about what it means to binge drink. And also, oh my God, you've totally fucked up your face. And I remember in that moment really feeling this intense kind of like pit drop in me where, what does this mean if my face is going to be scarred for forever? And when so much validation had either been given to me from my mother or my dad's mother, when she would say things like, "Come here, sweetie. This is my beautiful granddaughter who looks just like me." So even as a little girl, I was getting these deep messages of worthiness and meaning from my external self. Hi, friends. I just wanted to take a quick break and thank you for tuning in. I love making this podcast for you, and I hope you love listening. If you do, the best way to show it is leaving a review, especially on Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much in advance, and now back to the show. Okay, you're going to hear a page turn right now. So back to the doctor's office, they were sitting there and they were going over the scars on my face and what would be permanent and what wouldn't, and the creams I can put on and blah, blah, blah. And then before I knew it, I heard them talking about premature lines, like I wasn't even sitting in the room. And my mom said, yeah, Gina bodyboards a lot with her father and she's always in the sun and I'm just sitting there and I didn't think anything of it until all of a sudden my forehead was getting pricked with needles. And I just remember sitting there going, what the fuck? Like, what is going on? But nothing was truly expressed to me. And I went home and I remember just thinking like, that's bizarre. Maybe that was like part of the course for some of my scars. And then I was sitting one day in the cafeteria and one of my girlfriends said, Gina, dude, it's so crazy. You're normally like really expressive and your eyebrows are always raising, but I haven't seen your forehead move in like a couple weeks. And in that moment, which this still to me is so surreal, I went, what the actual fuck? And I went home to my mom and I said, what was put in my forehead, da, da, da. And so she went on to tell me it was preventative care. Okay, so I was a 16-year-old teenager who was getting the message of preventative aging. Now again, I really want to be gentle to my mom because my mom she was a product of her mother and her mother's mother. And my mom was an amazing woman in so many ways. And she had some flares of narcissism and vanity in other ways because that was really put on her. Her mom was really emotionally abusive and basically would always tell my mom that she was beautiful and that's what she could rely on, but not smart. So growing up, and you guys have heard this from me before in episodes, that's what I would witness. My mom body shame herself, talk about the aging, da, 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 da. So fast forward, I would watch my mom yo-yo, eating like shit to a crash diet, to exercising a lot, to not at all. And a lot of weekends, my mom then would go into this really internal space of gardening. And she would garden solo and she would put on these oversized jeans and her sweatshirts. And this was really, truly when I saw the essence of my mother, who she was when she was connected and embodied and really connected to her soul. And Dr. Shefali talks about this kind of in the beginning of her book. So my mom made our yards into these mosaics of just pure magic through landscaping. And I would watch her lose herself in that. Page turning right now. And it was the happiest and I believe absolutely the most connected she was to loving herself. Now, again, I want to focus on these moments. We can have these moments in life where we feel really deeply connected and loving. We can have moments in life where we're really hard on ourselves, and that's part of the rewiring. So it's, again, bringing this awareness and just noticing. So I guess I want to wrap that up by just saying that my mom was truly Kitty Valentina Ferrero when she was in the dirt and she was connected to the earth, creativity, her life force energy, and life. So going full circle back to the beginning of this talk, do I think that self-compassion and self-love are real and exist? Of course I do. Of course I do. But for women, I do think it's extra work. And this is not to negate men. They have had to hide their tears, fears, and their sexuality. They've had to don the role of provider and protector despite their authentic desires. They wear the masks of aggression or stoicism. And Dr. Shefali states, I don't want us to forget that we are the only ones enslaved to the patriarchy. Such is the way of a toxic system. Everyone suffers. When one is inauthentic, everyone loses. Similarly, when one breaks free, we learn that everybody has the capacity to. So she also says, the wise know well that there is never solely one side to an issue. Both men and women create, maintain, and perpetuate the failures of the other. We women are the co-creators of the system that subjugates us as much as we are its pawns. Part of being in this mess is because we contribute to its continuance. So for us women to achieve a state of inner freedom, we need to acknowledge our part in the patriarchy. Unless we do, we will continue to focus on only one side of the issue, which is what men have done to us. While it is true that men have indeed done much against women, such as violating our freedoms, abusing our bodies, and objectifying us, it hasn't been done without our co-participation as well. Yes, we need to educate our fathers, brothers, and sons about their ancestral legacy, holds in terms of being male. But this is not where our true and ultimate transformation lies. It begins with the question, what have we done to ourselves? So how have we internalized the external perpetuation and created the inner abuser? Okay, so as I wrap this up, I really don't want this to come across as me sitting there and going like, oh, if you're getting Botox, you're perpetuating the patriarchy and da. I'm expressing my own journey with my body and aging and self-acceptance and self-love and areas in which it hasn't really felt, there's my dog Lou, it hasn't really felt authentic or congruent is actually a better word for myself personally. Really feeling like what feels like a truth. And part of my truth and something that I am attempting to embrace is just aging as a woman, my body changing, not looking like it was in my early 20s, and loving up on that, really learning to love up on that. So I'm just looking over my notes right now. And so I guess what I just want to say to you is just think of your choices and think of the ways that you speak to yourself and think of ways that you're either authentically doing things for yourself or inauthentically. And thinking about the ways in your life where you're looking for just validation, approval, or praise. We do this as humans, not just as women, but humans in so many ways. So I apologize if this was a little bit botchy and I kind of slurred some of my words. I haven't been on the mic in a while. But again, I'm really trying to work past being a perfectionist and I'm just wanting to put myself out there. So to all of you, I hope that you have a day of loving up on yourself, and it's all about baby steps. And I think really, really wrapping this up, going back to the beginning of, it's about the baby daily steps and choices. And that's how we love, connect, and authentically step into our essence, or AKA our soul. Thank you so much for listening, and tune in to next week. Hi, friends. If you have been enjoying Spaces Between, please take a moment to subscribe, and leaving a review is the cherry on top. Thank you so much, and I look forward to connecting with you next week.